Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Teach Middle East podcast. I'm Lisa Grace. Today, I have with me Dan Fitzpatrick, and together, we are going down the AI rabbit hole. So come with us. We're going to go as far as the rabbit hole can take us because Dan is the AI educator. And as a result of that, I need him to guide me through the maze that is AI. And obviously, he's going to guide us all because we as teachers, we want to save time, we want to be efficient, we want to be effective. And Dan, in his posts on LinkedIn, which I have been following very closely, he's proposing that AI can help us do these things. And I really want him to guide us on this journey.
You are listening to the Teach Middle East podcast, connecting, developing, and empowering educators.
Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
It's a pleasure because guess what? You're here to help us, and we're going to be putting this out on all our socials everywhere because AI is a mystery to a lot of us, and some of us are deathly afraid. But before you help us, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Dan Fitzpatrick. I am, as you can probably already tell from my accent, if you're familiar with UK accents, I'm from the northeast of England, from a place called Newcastle. I've got a background in high school teaching, so I taught in high schools in County Durham, and then I moved into digital strategy. So I was the director for digital strategy for a group of colleges. We had about 12,000 students and 1,000 members of staff. So it was my job there to upskill staff and students with a team of about 25 that I had, and also make digital connections within industries in the area in the northeast of England. I guess like a lot of places now is a real hub for digital industry because of the sectors of growth that are going on within that industry. So that was my job. And as part of that job, I was really, really interested in virtual reality. So we had a lot of funding that we'd got to build out VR and AR facilities, and kind of threw myself into that. And then as I was doing that, soon realized that what was coming in terms of artificial intelligence would very much complement virtual reality. And then kind of my whole focus has flipped now. So the VR's kind of taken a back seat, although it does very much come into some of the things I do with artificial intelligence. Now, because of what's happened with kind of the release of ChatGPT in late November, and the whole world kind of going crazy for this technology, and it really having a disrupting factor on a lot of industries at the moment, including education, I left my previous job and now working full-time in AI. So I go by the AI Educator online, and it kind of all started for me in December. There wasn't very many educators tweeting or putting posts on LinkedIn or social media about artificial intelligence in a positive way. I'd come across a few negative comments. And I thought, you know what, from what I know, and from what I know of playing with the newest versions of this technology, it's got a real potential to transform education for the best. And we can get a bit into that because I think that falls under a few different categories. And then, so I started posting about it and started kind of leaning into it, creating resources for teachers, and very quickly noticed that a lot of teachers, and I was still very kind of conscious, and still am, to be fair, that social media kind of puts you in a bubble. And like you said, Lisa, before, there's still a lot of teachers, probably the vast majority, who still never use this technology or know much about it. But started showing those teachers who were on social media kind of how to use it, how to get the best out of it, and kind of started to build a community, really. So we started building a Facebook community where we've now got, I think we've just passed 15,500 members. And it's teachers from all over the world sharing tips, sharing concerns, sharing guidance, asking questions. That's a great community. So if anyone wants to join that, you just type into Facebook, if you're on there, the AI Classroom, and you'll find it. Yeah, and then kind of started a newsletter because I thought, right, I need to get things out here to teachers. And I've been very fortunate because that's built quite a lot, and very lucky every Sunday to be able to put that out and get a lot of interaction with that newsletter. And also I was asked by a publisher in the United States to write a book, and that's called The AI Classroom. That came out at the end of March. I'm still in shock that we managed to write it so fast. The whole aim was kind of, while producing these resources and talking to educators around the world, that they really needed a resource that they could kind of hold in their hands and act as a bit of a guide. And so it started off as a practical guide, just how to kind of delve into generative artificial intelligence that ChatGPT is. But then very quickly, as I came across more and more kind of pain points, we started to add more and more chapters in there. So there's a chapter on leadership, how to craft a strategy and policy. There's kind of an introduction to all the different tools that are out there. There's frameworks and how to ask ChatGPT or Google Bard a question. And there's a history of the technology. There's so much in there. In fact, it's nearly 400 pages altogether. And I still kind of pinch myself that we managed to get that out so fast. So, yeah, and then now I spend a lot of my time talking to lovely people like yourself about artificial intelligence around the world and from my computer screen in my spare bedroom. So, yeah, that's kind of me at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. You know, with Apple coming out with their new VR headset, you might be going back into AR and VR pretty soon.
Well, I think we're at the very start of a real merge between AI and VR. And I've just released it. It's a free half-an-hour course on my website where I show people how to use. There's a great tool called Blockade Labs. If you just type Blockade Labs into Google, it's a free website. You don't have to log in, so they don't take any personal details or anything like that. So it's safe to use. And you essentially just write a few words in, and based off your prompts, it creates a full 360 virtual reality environment. And then I show people within that course how to go to image generation tools and create their own realistic assets that they can put into that virtual world, and put a headset on and you're in there. So I think very much where that technology will go is, and I know some companies are working on this at the moment, it will literally be to put a headset on and speak and say something like, put a tree over there, put a building over there, create a classroom, create this. You'd literally be able to speak realities into existence within virtual reality, which quite excites me, really. And I think where that real use case between artificial intelligence paired with VR, that use case is going to be such a crazy use case, because if VR is going to be big, and I know there's been a lot of stalls in this journey for VR, especially when it comes to kind of Facebook and Meta, Mark Zuckerberg trying to push it and then kind of fading into the background a bit. There's been a lot of people talking about, will VR actually become the big thing everyone thought it was going to be? I still think it will, and I think it'll get there by being paired with AI, because the functionality is going to be unreal. And I remember when I was leading on VR projects in my old job, to create a virtual reality world, we'd pay a company about 15,000 British pounds to do that. And now the tools are there with no technical skills to be able to, within half an hour, create something of very similar quality. And a democratization of that creativity is just phenomenal in such a short period of time.
I love how you went about, your journey as the AI educator. Like, you saw something that was on the cusp of being, the thing that will be talked about by everybody. And then you just got the handle, the AI educator, which, by the way, is brilliant. I was like, when I saw that, I was like, brilliant catch. And then you really just start creating content around it. One of my things that I'm known for talking about, I wrote about this in Philippa Raithmel's book, The Digital Strategy. I wrote a chapter in that book about why educators should create content, because I'm like the evangelist of that. Why do you think educators should create content?
That's a good question. You might have noticed me looking around there, because I've got that book somewhere. My room is just full of books everywhere, but it's in a pile somewhere around me.
The Digital Ecosystem. Brilliant book.
Yeah, it's great. Remember, I bought it at the same time as Al Kingsley's book on digital strategy, and they both really helped me in my previous job. I think because it's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think it's because artificial intelligence really kind of infringes upon human creativity. And when I say that, I'm not making a judgment there, because I think there's a lot of positives there. And I mentioned kind of the democratization of skills, or the democratization of creativity, which is amazing for someone like me who finds it really difficult to draw or have or be very creative kind of physically. So I think a lot, if not all, of what we do as humans, and forgive me, I used to be a philosophy teacher, so if I go too philosophical, just bring me back down to earth, but sometimes I can't help it. But I think most of what we do as humans, if not all, is based on a foundation of creativity. And I think that's probably where we find happiness as humans. I know certainly I do, and I suppose you can only really speak primarily from your own perspective, but a lot of what I do, if I find it difficult to be creative within that sphere, I find it a bit boring. And I think it was the same when I was a teacher as well. So a big part of me trying to be a good teacher and enjoying teaching was that I really loved creating something that I could then share with the students in front of me, and so that it could really kind of try and inspire them and to help them develop deeper learning. And also being in the room with students and kind of seeing that, what is it, kind of like spontaneous creativity. And I used to, believe it or not, but before I became a teacher, I was a stand-up comedian for a couple of years. And I used to really enjoy kind of the just kind of sparring with an audience, kind of just, I mean, it's terrifying, but just kind of doing, they call it crowd work, where someone from the audience might say something and you try and get something funny out of it with them. And I really used to love doing that with students, because it would kind of, and not just to be funny, but to deepen the understanding or to progress the learning. And it's probably, we might want to return to this, but it's probably one of the downfalls of some of this technology is that it can produce you resources and so on, plan lessons. But a large part of what a teacher is reacting to the students that are in front of them. So as I'm sure most teachers will know, that you can have the perfect lesson plan, but how often does it actually pan out that way? So yeah, I think that creativity is at the center of what we do. And it goes back to creating curriculums, creating lessons, creating an atmosphere within the room, and I suppose what I'm talking about is creating a learning environment that's conducive and a place where our students want to learn. So I think, to go back to your original question, I think being able to create content is absolutely vital. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but when I was in the classroom, it's been about 1.5 years, 2 years since I was in the classroom, but I could very rarely, in fact, if ever, take a pre-written resource or a pre-created resource and just use it as it was. And I think it goes back to what I was saying about how, actually, let's say you've got 2 Year 9 classes and they're both very similar. If you prepared one resource for one class, you'd probably have to adapt it, whether that be pre-planned or in the moment, because it's a very different group of students who've got different needs, different abilities. Yeah, and just a different set of human beings. It's a bit like if you ever deliver PD sessions or talks to groups of teachers, like a talk in front of one group of teachers can be very different to a talk in front of another group of teachers because of the dynamics and what the needs are in the room. So I think being able to create content, whatever that might be, is a big thing for teachers, I think. It's a huge thing. It's an expression of who they are as a teacher. And it's a bridge between them and the students, essentially. It's the professional bridge. So, yeah, and I think AI has so much to offer with creating content.
Good. I agree with you. So from your perspective then, what are some of the ways, because we know that AI helps us to do things faster. We had a webinar with some great people on it recently about harnessing the power of AI in education. And we touched on some of that. But if you are a teacher and you're thinking, okay, how do I use this? What is the value? How can you use AI to reduce some of the administrative burden on teachers and allow them to do what you just mentioned, which is that creative piece?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I would start with something like ChatGPT or Google Bard. Google Bard is now completely free to people who use Google Workspace, if you're a school who uses Google Workspace. ChatGPT is free as well, unless you pay for the Plus version. Just have a go at it. Start asking it questions and seeing what it can produce for you. And if you go on and let's say, for example, if I wrote in, create me a set of questions for my biology class on plant cells, for example, it will create a bunch of questions. However, as any good teacher will soon realize, actually, a lot of those questions won't be very useful because, again, the technology doesn't know the students. It doesn't know what the students have previously learned. It doesn't really know how many little things. You didn't ask it how many questions you wanted. It can produce you 20 questions when you only wanted 3 questions, and so on. So I think once you've had to play around with it in those initial few days or even that initial first 5 minutes, I think you're very quickly going to want to start thinking about your questions to ChatGPT. And I kind of say to the teachers I work with, the quality of the input dictates the quality of the output. And so if your input, your question or your prompt is very vague, you're going to get a very vague, not very good resource or answer from ChatGPT or Google Bard. So you need to be specific. So one of the things I did in the AI classroom book was I created this framework called the PREP framework. And it's an acronym and it stands for prompt, rule, explicit instructions, and parameters. And it's just a framework to have whenever you're writing a question or trying to ask an AI generator to create some content for you. Prompt it, so ask it your initial question. So for example, if we go back to the biology plant cell questions, I might say, I would like you to write some questions about plant cells for my biology class. Now, that's where a lot of people would then press enter and submit the question. But actually, there's a few more steps to really, really hone that craft of, we call it prompt craft, essentially a fancy way of saying honing your question skills. So then you give it a role. And some people feel a bit silly the first time they do this. But actually, if you tell the generative AI who you want it to be, it will use that persona, that role, to pull on the knowledge it needs to provide a good answer for you. So, for example, I might say you are a Year 9 biology teacher who has a specific interest in plant cells, and you have a great ability of explaining complex ideas in a simple way to students, for example. Then you want to give it some explicit instructions. This is probably the most important bit. So it's essentially, it's a bit of a catch-all for just tell it everything you need to tell it, because it can't read your mind. So you might want to say, right, we've been studying the cell membranes recently. We've been studying I don't know, I'm really testing my biology skills here from school. So whatever you've been learning with the students, put it in there. You might have some students who have English as an additional language in your class. So tell it to produce maybe a more simplified version or a resource to help with that. And then the last thing is the parameters. So it's kind of the style. So what tone would you like it to write in? Would you like to be professional, a familiar tone, maybe even a humorous tone, although it tries with humor. It's not always the best. Also, how many questions do you want? Do you want it in a table format? However you want it to kind of, the parameters to be around that text. And I just think it's a really nice framework, and it overwhelms me really, because I know I get hundreds of teachers around the world getting in contact with me to tell me they're using this framework on a regular basis and it's really helping them. And not just teachers. A lot of my work is with businesses as well, helping businesses use this technology, and I give them a version of this framework, which really helps. And you just see that the quality of what you get out of it is so much better. And so then you can go on to create, and I've got in the book, there's a chapter called 40 prompts that you can use straight away with ChatGPT. And then there's everything from creating those questions, creating lesson plans, grading and feedback of student work. There is administrative tasks like creating a risk assessment. There's just so much you can do, really. Anything you would kind of ask of yourself or would be asked of you, you can ask ChatGPT and see what it comes up with. Now, it might not be the greatest answer you get, but I mean, to be honest, it's pretty impressive, but it might not be the thing that you need, but you then edit it, you collaborate with it. And one thing I always tell teachers is that, remember, it's called ChatGPT. So it's not just one question, one answer, and then you take what you're given or you leave it because it's not very good. You can go back to it and you can ask it, and we tend to call this training it. So you train it in what you want, and you might have kind of previous questions that you've created yourself. You can actually copy and paste them in and say, do it in this style. So you're training it, you're modeling what you want. And hopefully some teachers listening to this will begin to realize, actually, this is kind of no different to how you would interact with a student to a certain degree. And actually, if you look across society, there's probably no better profession than a teacher at learning how to prompt AI, because that's our craft. It's our bread and butter, asking questions or asking certain types of questions to elicit certain types of responses from our students so that we can get to grips with what they've learned and how they've progressed. And it's no different here. All those techniques that we use to ask students questions, like modeling, for example, we can do that with ChatGPT. So I really think we've already got the skills. It's just kind of pivoting those skills and using them with artificial intelligence to get the most out of it that we can get. And thinking about this almost as like an assistant, a teaching assistant or an administrative assistant that you can use to bounce ideas off. I quite regularly use it to just ask it some questions. Sometimes I'll just write something myself. And I wrote something yesterday and I put it into ChatGPT. That was my newsletter. I wrote the newsletter myself, and then I put it into ChatGPT and said, can you read this? My aims are to be impactful, to be succinct and so on. And can you give me some feedback? And actually, out of the 5 bits of feedback it gave me, the first bit of feedback I used, and it was my opening line. I didn't really fulfill on it as the blog went on. And I just needed to go back and kind of fulfill on the promise of the opening line of the blog. And it worked so well. And I think that's the key to this. So I think a lot of teachers, a lot of educational leaders sometimes get afraid because they think, well, am I just handing all of this over to an artificial intelligence chatbot to do for me and have no control over it? I think you have to stay in control. And another thing I say to teachers is you do the thinking and let the AI do the doing. And I suppose a bit like having an assistant, it's your intent, it's your sentiment, it's what you want. It should always be what you want is the end result. But you've got some help to do it. You've got this AI to help do it. And I think that's where we're currently at with this technology. I think we've got a great assistant to be able to help us. And like I said before about using other people's content or finding a resource, for example, I think the same with ChatGPT. I don't know about you, Lisa, but whenever I've created something with ChatGPT, very, very rarely, in fact, I don't think I've ever just copy and pasted it and used it. Even though a lot of myself and a lot of me crafting my question has gone into that output. So I think I do hold some ownership over it. I still then have to go and tweak it and make it fully my own, I think. And I think that's the key to using this technology and the key to getting great resources in a short period of time.
Yeah. I think I'm still yet to use it to its full potential. As a writer, I write a lot. I write every day. So nowadays, what I'm doing is I'm putting my writing into ChatGPT, and I'm asking it to critique it. And I'm asking it to give me a one-liner, an opening hook, things like that. And sometimes I might ask it to give me 3 or 4 opening hooks. And then I might choose one. And even the one I choose, I still tweak because it has to sound like me if it doesn't. And then because I've been writing for so long that now my readers know my voice. And so I think they'll pick up the ChatGPT. I'm worried, actually, that they'll pick up the ChatGPT quicker than somebody who's new to writing and are now just coming in and using AI. They don't yet have a tone and a voice. But I've been editing Teach Middle East for many, many years. I speak like I do here on the pod. So now, my readership or my listenership, they know what I sound like. So if I start using it, but like you said, it's a really good assistant. So I can use it to really help me to be more efficient. And that's what I've been doing with it. I love it though. Like I love the fact that I can chat to it. So like I was writing some stuff for schoolfinder.ae, which is a new project that I'm consulting on. And I put in there a prompt, and I didn't know about prep, but that's exactly how I do my prompts actually. So prep sounds like a brilliant, brilliant concept. And so once I put it in and it gives me something and I go through it, I give it feedback. I say, yes, but you've missed the mark on this. And I asked you to do this. Now, can you please go back like I'm talking to someone? That's how I talk to it. Is that the right way to do it?
I think so. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, really. I think we're all just kind of discovering how to use this technology. But I think you're right. And I know I've done some work with marketing agencies and marketing departments of companies. I think about a month ago, I was doing a session with Welsh Water, so the water board in Wales and their marketing team. And we were kind of playing around with putting the blogs and the PR that they put out or have previously put out. We were training the AI, the ChatGPT, to learn the voice of the water company. So they could learn what type of tweets they normally write, what type of articles they write, the tone, how long they are, kind of how long the sentences are that they write. And then when we trained it, then we were getting it to produce new content in the similar voice. And I know a lot of marketing professionals who are leading the way with AI at the moment. That's what they do. I mean, you can follow them on LinkedIn. There's so many of them. And in fact, their prompts or their question within ChatGPT sometimes is 20 times bigger than the actual response they want, because they might just want to write a tweet or a Facebook post, for example, for their marketing campaign. But the amount that they train it on. And the great thing about ChatGPT is that it saves the history. So once you've trained it in a certain voice, you can then return to it and keep using that voice. You don't have to start from scratch every time. And I think that's one of the keys of using this as a teacher, is because teachers have a voice as well. I remember when I was training to be a teacher, and again, because of my comedy background, where stand-up comedians also have to find their voice on stage. And I remember my mentor during my PGCE telling me, it'll take a year or so to find your voice and who you are in the classroom. And I think because of that, we do have a voice. And if we were to then start creating content or providing feedback that just looked computer generated, although it can do it very convincingly, I think there's something almost, dare I say, disingenuous about it. And not in a malicious way, but just in a way that it might be perceived by students or by colleagues. So I think actually putting the effort in and training it up so that it becomes your assistant and can help you relay your voice with added benefits like being more succinct, being more precise, I think is is a really good thing. And I remember back in January when I first started posting about this, I posted a little tutorial on how, as an educational leader, you might want to use ChatGPT to draft an email to staff. And I remember somebody challenging me on Twitter and saying, well, I think they were a teacher in a school, and they said, if my head teacher sent me that email and I found out it was created with AI, I wouldn't be happy and I would find it very disingenuous. And I remember, because I love being challenged on Twitter because it helps me kind of get my head around it as well and give clarity to my thoughts. And I remember really thinking about this and mulling it over and thinking, well, actually, if the outcome is what I would have wrote anyway, and the intention and the tone is how I would write, then actually I don't see how it's any different to a head teacher having a PA who would draft a copy for them, or anyone who's been using Gmail for the last couple of years knows that it finishes off your sentences now. And it's been doing that for a while because it learns how you write and gives suggestions of how, a bit like predictive text, I guess. And how long have we had that? So I think this is the next kind of evolution of that, albeit a big step in evolution, but it's the next stage with that. And I think as long as you're true to yourself and portray through whatever content is being created your true self as a teacher, as an educational leader, I think it's really powerful. And I think it can offer genuine communication and genuine opportunities for learning.
Yeah. So like you just mentioned about the fact that someone on Twitter challenged you and thought it would be disingenuous of that principal to send an email that was written to ChatGPT. What are some of the biggest hurdles about, trying to integrate AI into the education system, and how can we overcome them? So let's take part A first. What are some of those big hurdles and challenges in trying to put AI now into an already very archaic, might I add, education system?
Yeah. I mean, we could probably do a 3-hour podcast just on this question, I think, because there's so many. And I don't mean that to be a barrier for anybody who's thinking of integrating AI. I think there are a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, but I think we can get over them, and some of them we can get over very quickly. So I think one of the big concerns is the AI in the students' hands, and very rightly so. So we're still learning about the impact of social media on our students. And all of a sudden now we've got a technology that just kind of blows social media out of the water. And we're very much in the wild west of this technology. Think the internet in the mid-90s, before Google existed. People were kind of feeling around in the dark with this technology, producing things. There was a lot of hype around it. We're in the wild west and we haven't regulated it yet. So there's a lot of concerns, but there are solutions out there for that. And I'll just give a little example and I'll move on. But I work with some students, and I was working with a student group the other day, and I was able to find some tools that were friendly for students and that students could use. And actually, I did a full session with a few groups of students where they were creating AI art. They were talking to an AI avatar, and the learning and the engagement and what they were using it for was just absolutely phenomenal. So there are ways over that, and I think that will keep getting better. So as this technology becomes more mainstream, I think we'll see government regulation at a much faster pace than how it dealt with social media. We'll also see guidelines and kind of guardrails for use. And there's some great resources coming out of the US government education department have just brought out quite a lengthy document, which I actually, just almost for a bit of fun last week, I created an AI-generated documentary on YouTube based on that document, where it's AI, realistic-looking AI avatars talking about the document. So if the prospect of reading a 40-page document isn't really high on your agenda, you could maybe stick that documentary on in the background and listen to the conversations, and because it's a really good document. So I think there's the safety concerns, which I think will be ironed out eventually. There's privacy concerns there as well, and I think there are ways around that at the moment. So there's this third-party tools, and I've got a website called Educator.tools, which is a collaborative effort to produce a repository of tools out there for educators. And you can go on there, you can search by the function. So is it an image creator? Is it a chat? Is it a lesson creator? Is it a resource creator? And so on. And then by the pricing model as well. There's a lot of free tools out there. So if you want to get started with some of the tools that are integrating this technology and make it more bespoke for teachers, you can do it that way. And a lot of them will come with their own privacy policies, which you can access through the website as well, and just help you with those security issues. So there's those ones. I think that's probably the biggest one, because safeguarding our children is obviously paramount. I think probably let's go to what I would consider the second biggest one. And I think it's a bit of a red herring, and we can get into why, but I think it's the whole kind of cheating debate around this technology. So with our students using it to maybe generate content for assessment or homework and then handing it in as their own, I think that's another concern. I think it's a genuine concern, especially within the current system of how we do education around the world. That's a very broad general statement there, but for the majority of countries and education systems, it's a challenge because quite frankly, how do I say this in a nice way?
Don't say it in a nice way. Just say it.
I think quite frankly, we're out of date as a system, and we need to be more dynamic and more creative with things like assessment. And actually in the book, there's a few page and a table rubric of how to take an assessment and create and turn it into work for students that allows the teacher to assess it and understand the progress of the student, but actually it's the student's own thoughts and own work. So they might have prepared it with ChatGPT, but then if you have a conversation with them about it, if you ask them to create a presentation or do a bit of collaborative work or try to solve a real world problem or go into industry and do something with that information, you're very quickly going to realize if they're progressed in their knowledge or in their learning. So I think we have to be more creative about that. And I think that the almost side effect of that will mean that they've got skills that they can use in the real world. So essay writing is not really a skill they can use in the real world unless you edit a magazine like yourself, Lisa, or a professional writer. But actually communication skills, collaboration skills, presentation skills, and so on, if we assess it through these lenses, assess their progress through these lenses, then not only can we gain a true understanding of their knowledge, but we can also embed those skills. So I think there's easily ways to get around that. I think some of the other challenges, I think there's a big fear factor out there. The media doesn't help. So whenever there's a media story, which there seems to be one every day at the moment around this technology, it's kind of around, is this technology going to take over the world? Like, that's kind of how it's framed. Or is it going to disrupt jobs and things like that? Which I think it will. Yeah. And it's a concern, and there's some predictions that 2/3 of the jobs that we have could disappear in the next 10 years, which is a crazy statistic. But we're at the doorway right now. We're at the start line of one of the biggest technological advancements in human history. And that's truth. And where this technology could go. And I've spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about how to optimize the current system. And by the way, I think when I said before about there's different facets to this transformation, I think optimizing the current system won't last very long. So if we want to get into the kind of more radical side of where this technology could go, I think that actually the current system, how we educate, is going to have to change. Because let's just take a logical approach. If we've all got access to a tool like ChatGPT, very quickly, and this technology is going to advance so fast. Greg Brockman, who is the co-founder of OpenAI, who created ChatGPT, said, and he said this in February, he said within 12 months, so let's say February 2024, we're going to look back at the technology we're using today, the AI technology, as quaint and antiquated. And it's the most advanced technology we've ever used as a human race. And literally within the next 10 months, we're going to look back at it as old-fashioned. And that's how fast this is going to go. And how does he know? Because they're working on it. They've already got the next models of this technology. ChatGPT 3, which is what you get if you go on the free version of ChatGPT, was actually created back in 2020. And they started using it back in 2020. And then they actually cut it off in 2021. So it's actually it's an old model that we're using. Very impressive, but it's an old model. And they already have the future models that they're working on, and they can see where this technology is going. And it's going to advance really, really fast. And I think one of the consequences of this is that we can't just stop everything we're doing as schools, colleges, universities, and have up-to-date professional development every time there's a new advancement, because it'll be happening quite regularly. We'll not be able to do any other professional development. So something needs to change. And we're very quickly going to be in a position where ChatGPT is creating the resources, creating the work, because the teacher's asking it. The student is digesting the work through ChatGPT, is completing the work through ChatGPT, is handing the work in. The teacher is marking the work through ChatGPT and giving feedback to the student through ChatGPT. And this is happening right now. We're in a position where ChatGPT is essentially marking its own homework, and what students won't progress that way. And it's because of and we talk about antiquated AI models, because of the antiquated educational models that we still inhabit. The education system's done an amazing job over the last few decades of resisting disruption while the world around has been disrupted massively. And we've become very good at picking and choosing what new technology, for example, to use as long as it upholds the current way of doing things. So, for example, instead of a chalkboard, now we've got an interactive screen at the front of the classroom. It's not too different. It's apart from some of the functionalities.
Electronic, that's it.
And actually, for some schools, that's the height of their digital innovation over the last few years. And in fact, and I've got personal experience of this, some schools aren't even there yet. So we very much try to optimize the current system. And when I say this, I'm thinking of, I was very lucky a few years ago to do a postgraduate diploma in innovation and design thinking at MIT. And one of the professors, VJ, he wrote a book a few years ago called The 3-Box Solution to Innovation. And he works with companies all over the world. And he essentially says, whatever your business is, whether that be finance or even education, whatever your business is, think of your organization as in 3 different boxes. And box 1 is the current system. It's the current things that are working. And it's what's bringing you success or has brought you success in the past. And we really try hard to optimize that current system, and rightfully so. And probably one of the most cliche examples of this is a factory. And to get from the raw materials in one door and to get out as the finished product through another door, a factory is engineered by top engineers who are paid a lot of money to really engineer efficiency within that system. And that kind of thinking is prevalent in our education system at the moment. And we get phrases like every second counts, every minute counts, and break times, especially, and I speak from an English education system point of view, where break times are shortened, lunch times are shortened, so more sessions can be added on. And it's all about engineering efficiency. And technology sometimes is embedded to engineer efficiency. So things like Google Classroom, Teams, they can help really. And by the way, I'm a massive advocate for some of these tools. But I think they're only accepted and put into schools, and again, a broad statement, when they can uphold and engineer efficiency in the current system. And I think that's a problem, because we're not a factory, we're a school and it was in my blog last week in my newsletter where I talked about our students are struggling. Our students are struggling with their mental health. They're struggling because they're being taught arbitrary curriculums that doesn't have any meaning to them. They're struggling because they're told to think hard for 7 hours a day, and the brain doesn't actually work like that. They're struggling because they leave school without any real meaningful skills sometimes. When I used to be head of careers and when I worked in a high school, and I would regularly meet with employers where they would literally beg the teachers in the room to teach children skills, because they would get students who got straight A grades but actually couldn't maintain eye contact and have a conversation with somebody. So there's a lot of ways we're failing our children with this system, all for the sake of a good grade at the end of it. That seems to be the end point. And actually, what does a good grade mean? I was talking to a really well-respected university professor a few months ago who said, actually, the value of a degree really is that it gets you in the door to an interview these days. That's probably the value of a degree. And that's where the value kind of stops. And again, I took part in a panel at a business meeting in London a few weeks ago where they were saying, actually, we don't really look at what the grades are anymore. We look at kind of what somebody's like as a person when we meet them. Are they able to learn new things? Are they able to get on with the people around them? Are they able to build their skills? What experience have they got? Very rarely, if ever, do they actually look at the grades. And in fact, grades tend to be looked at if they've got so many applications and they just need a way to filter. And this is what we're telling children to sacrifice some of the best days of their lives for. And I think we're in a real kind of corner here. And to go back to the 3-box solution, box 3 is actually, where does the organization go to detect weak signals? So what's coming down the line that might actually disrupt the industry, disrupt the organization? And you could say a few years ago, if we were in box 3, we might have actually noticed AI coming down the line. And what else are we missing that could be banging on the door in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? And I know this is really difficult. It's not the classroom teacher's fault. Classroom teachers very rarely have the opportunity to look out towards the horizon through their classroom window because there's so much going on inside the building and within inside their jobs. But we need to build capacity to look towards those weak signals and start to innovate. And actually, 9 times out of 10, those innovations will be failures. because the weak signals might not amount to much, but actually every now and then one of those weak signals will become a large signal and will actually disrupt the world around us, which is what we're in at the moment. So I think the education system, the box one, how we've always done it type of traditional education, is going to be massively disrupted. It can't just pick and choose this time. I think it's going to be in a situation where this technology is going to bring viable alternatives. And just like any industry, I guess, the education system will either have to adapt or competition and irrelevance will come to it. And we're already seeing competition. We're seeing online schools being created that are getting massive venture capitalist investment, huge multi-million-dollar investment. Look at what Khan Academy's doing. Look at what EtonX is doing in the UK, because they know that this could be the direction where things are going. They're acting, they're being innovative. I know personally a guy who set up a school with Elon Musk in the United States. Josh Darney's called. He set up a school called Synthesis, where they are investing so much money in creating online learning systems that develop children's problem-solving skills and communication skills and collaboration skills. And they're already getting interest. Some of their students who are like 9, 8 years old are already getting interest from industries, because they know that if they carry on in that synthesis school, they're going to be some of the best problem solvers in the world. They're going to be some of the best people that they want in their industries. So there is another way. Competition is coming. And I'm not saying, I know some people will be listening going, well, online school isn't the answer. Of course it's not. But it could be part of an answer. And I very much see probably education in the next couple of decades becoming almost like a menu. So a menu of well, I maybe do this online class on a Monday and meet with my international cohort to learn that skill. And then I go to a sports club in the afternoon, which is on my street. But I think we're going to see more of that. And one of the key indicators of that, especially here in the UK, is that after COVID, the amount of parents who are taking their children out of school to homeschool them is vastly increasing. And I think it's an indication of actually parents are looking for something different, they're looking for something that's going to actually serve the success of their children. And I think AI is just going to help this, because AI can right now actually, and will only increase in its ability to do this, offer purely personalized learning, where it's almost like the utopia of a human teacher, isn't it? That even though you might have 20, 30 students in front of you, you want it to be a personal experience for all of the students. But although we strive for that, it's impossible. It is impossible. But AI can actually help with that, can actually provide that and be able to do that in phenomenal ways. So I think personalization, I think the ability to get expertise, world-class expertise. And I know as a teacher, sometimes my students were limited by my ability, were limited by my knowledge as a teacher. And we hear phrases like the expert in the room, or the teacher is the font of knowledge. And it's almost become popular language within some educational philosophies over the last few years. And when I hear that, I just think, my goodness, like the student shouldn't be inhibited by my ability and my knowledge. Fair enough, I'm there to assist in their learning, but actually there's a whole world out there of skills, knowledge, learning to be had, and AI can help with bringing that to students. So I think personalization, and access to greater knowledge, and then also kind of some of those benefits that we see with cloud technology, sort of being able to access it at any time of the day, being able to access it from anywhere in the world as well. I think we're about to go through a learning revolution. And if our schools, colleges, universities don't grapple with this, then we're just going to create more of a digital divide. During COVID, we very quickly noticed that the students who had access to technology and who had the skills to use technology, their learning pretty much didn't change from being in the classroom. And those students who weren't privileged, I guess is one way to put it, and didn't have access to technology and didn't have the skills, pretty much missed out on 2 years worth of learning. Now, that's a huge gap and a massive digital divide. And I think AI will just exacerbate that divide unless schools, colleges, universities actually grapple with it. Because let's say, for example, there's two schools opposite each other on a street. One school is embracing artificial intelligence and integrating it into what they do, teaching their students what it is, embedding skills of how to use it. And a school across the road is just not touching it whatsoever. Just think of the difference in life prospects that a student from each one of those schools is going to have. Because I've said it and I'll say it again, that if I was an employer and I had a student come to me who wanted a job, who had straight A skills but didn't know how to use AI, and I had a student come with C grade skills but knew how to use AI, I'm going to pick the C grade student every time, because they'll grow with this technology. So Yeah, I think the education system, I think probably just to recap, my view is very much that AI can help us optimize the system right now through help being that assistant to create content and resources and so on and save us time. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a much needed thing because teachers need those. They're essential. And some schools and colleges and universities are bursting at the seams because there's not enough time and the amount of goodwill that teachers give. So I think that's a really, really good thing. And that's what I dedicate most of my life to doing at the moment, is helping teachers understand the short-term benefits of this technology, to give them that breathing space and help develop learning. But then also I think we need to have a foot in box 3 and be thinking, where's this technology going to go? Because in 6 months, 12 months, my goodness, in 10 years, what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
And if we're not ready, if we're not in box 3 listening for those weak signals, let's be honest, they're strong signals right now. If we're not listening to those signals, then we're very quickly going to become irrelevant, and there's going to be competition within the education system, which we've never seen before. And so it could be a tough time. It could be an exciting time. I think it'll be an exciting time, especially for those who matter the most in this process, which is the students.
Yeah. I got a quick last question for you. This was brilliant, Dan. Wow.
I told you I can just keep talking and talking. So just
and I told you I could just keep listening and listening. No, but on a real, give me your top 5, not ChatGPT, because we know that that's the base of a lot of new plugins, and a lot of new startups have built themselves on the back of ChatGPT. So go down into your vault and come up with 5 tools that educators need to look at right now that can help them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the website AIeducator.tools has got over 100 tools on there that we kind of
Give me
personally... 5. Was I avoiding the question there? So I think one tool that I've actually worked on personally, I've helped the company create, which I think, I mean, obviously I worked on it, but I think is a fantastic resource. It's the 5-minute lesson plan by Ross McGill, Teacher Toolkit. So anyone who knows Teacher Toolkit will have probably heard of the 5-minute lesson plan. But what we've done is at Angel Solutions, we're an edtech company in the UK. So myself, Angel Solutions, and Ross McGill, Teacher Toolkit, have worked on an AI version of the 5-minute lesson plan, which you can get at 5minutelessonplan.co.uk. And you get 2-week free trial on that. And it's, I think, one of the big pain points of some of these new AI tools is that it's just AI for the sake of it, in a way. And teachers, rightfully so, are going, well, where's the pedagogy? Where's the pedagogical knowledge behind it? You can be rest assured that 13 years of pedagogical research from Ross McGill has gone into the 5-minute lesson plan, and we're just enhancing that with AI. So it's really a great tool where pedagogy is meeting AI. So that, yeah, check that out.
Number 2.
Number 2, I quite like, is a simple tool to use, QuizGecko. So QuizGecko, essentially, you can upload any document. So if you've got a resource that already exists, upload it, and then it'll create a quiz off the back of that document for you. So again, it's almost like training the AI with that document. So you're not having to write it all in, write prompts and things like that. It just learns your content and bases the questions off of your content, which I think is phenomenal.
3.
I really like, it's called Superus, so SUPERUS. It's a bit like ChatGPT, but what it does is with the answers, it presents the answers in a mind map. So it'll give you the core idea, then it'll branch out and give you the sub-ideas. And then what you can do is then interact with that mind map and get it to create an image off the back of one idea or go deeper on another idea. I'm quite a visual person, so that I really like that concept.
Cool.
What are we on now? Number 4, if you've got a class, especially like a primary school class, and you want to delve into some cool AI with them, there's a great tool called Animated Drawings. It's Sketch Meta Demo Lab, and I use this with a group of students. Get them to draw a picture or find a picture on the internet of a person or a character, and then what you do is you just upload it and it animates the drawing, so they can turn their creations into animated drawings, which is pretty cool, and primary school kids absolutely love it.
Yay! Number 5.
Number 5, it's not necessarily a teaching tool, but I really, really like it. It's called Audio Pen, and essentially it's a note-taking app that you can have on your phone. And what it does is if you press the record button, you can then just talk into it. And so if you're out for a walk and you've got an idea for a blog or an idea for a new resource, you talk into it. And what it does is it uses ChatGPT technology in the background to provide a detailed summary of your... So if you're like me...
Write that down.
If you're in an hour and a lot and then you go back and look at a transcript of your voice notes, it's just a lot of... You're going to have to do some work to find the nugget of the good idea that you had in there. What this will do is it'll get rid of all of the and ahhing and really summarize it into a nice, concise, and you can train it a bit as well. So you can ask for how long you want the summary to be, what tone you want the summary to be in. And then what you can do is you can search your voice notes afterwards as well. So if you're wanting to pull them together, it's very early, and the guy is really active on Twitter and really builds in real time on Twitter. Oh, don't ask me that.
It's okay, I'll find him. Don't worry, I'm good like that.
Yeah, but if you search audio pen, you'll find it. I think it's going to be big, or it'll get bought out and put into a more established product. I'm going to give you a bonus. Canva. If anyone uses Canva, the AI tools in Canva are phenomenal at the moment. So you can do a lot of what we're talking about: image creation, presentation creation, and writing. AI generated writing, all within Canva, and it's really top notch. So yeah, they're my favorite at the moment.
Superb, Dan. Wow. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Dan. I'm going to ask you to send me all those links. We're going to put all those links in the show notes, to your blog, to your socials, to your book. And people follow Dan. Like, this is how he ended up on this podcast. I followed him on LinkedIn and I love his content. Loads in there. I'm not a massive AI nerd, but I can see myself going there. I literally can see myself going down that path. We're getting back out of the rabbit hole. Thank you very much. It's been brilliant.
Thanks, Lisa. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Teach Middle East podcast. Visit our website, teachmiddleeast.com, and follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes.